Vinyl 45 in 1978, and it's come out several other times, and in 2003, a station in Cincinnati, Ohio, played it as a tribute to the fallen astronauts from the Columbia Space Shuttle. I ended up getting a letter of it. It ended up on 300 stations. Other stations heard it and wanted to play it. And I ended up getting a letter from NASA thanking me for writing the song and giving such inspiration to younger people for the space program. Then, to my surprise, I opened up my post office box one day, and there was a letter thanking me from the White House, signed by George W. Bush. So the song keeps reincarnating, and it was on an Italian album in, that must have been about 2005, I think, called The Man from Moo, and now it's the lead song on Eclectia. So it's come back into the spotlight a few times, and I'm very thankful. And
wow.
I had a talk once. My friend Harry Nilsson, who was a great singer songwriter, had a party in about 1978, and I told him I was coming over here to record that song. And he said, "Oh, come to my party," and they sent a car to get me. And his house was up in the Hollywood Hills, and I walk in with my acoustic guitar, and there's about 30 people there in his big living room. And over in the corner, there was John Lennon. So Harry put me on the spot and said, "This is my friend Merrel from Maui. He's going to sing a song for us." I never gotten stage fright in my entire life, but my lips started twitching. So I played the song On Our Way to Hana, which was about seeing two silver saucers while driving the beautiful road to Hana out in the jungle. And as soon as I finished, John said, "That is very interesting. What inspired that?" So people started gravitating over to where the food and drinks were set up, and John and I went off into a little alcove, and we got to talk. And we were talking about songwriting, and he said, "I didn't write any of those songs in the Beatles." And I went, "What?" And he said, "They were given to me by my muse." And he said, "Isn't it interesting what inspires songs and where they come from?" And he said, "My best songs were written in 15 minutes. And I said the same thing. So we really had a meeting of the minds there at that point, and I was so thankful to be able to talk to him, even just for a few minutes, and having the same experience. And he later on had a sighting in New York City on the roof with May Pang, and that was after he and I had met, and we never talked about UFOs or anything that night.
Wow. TJ, what do you want to say? Questions, feedback?
Oh, can you hear me? I'm just really enjoying it. I was keeping on mute so I wouldn't make any sounds, but awesome. This is great, Merrel. What do you want to talk about? Because you're so eclectic as a singer, songwriter, and, of course, a guitar player. But it's always nice to reminisce of your life story and people you've met and crossed their paths and all of that. But why don't you tell people what got you from Kentucky, where, I told you I lived for 20 years with my husband doing bluegrass music through Nashville, 100 miles away, and then I recorded it with a few people down there and then paid a lot of musicians. But the thing is, you're a singer-songwriter, and you moved from Kentucky, and I guess just give us an idea of growing up, because, we all were back in the 60s, and you were hanging out and doing surfing and had this awesome life. But just sort of tell us, like, what it was like being you, because I find meeting people, we cross paths sooner or later. And I told you about Willie Nelson Round Rock with my parents across the way, and then I crossed his path several times to open up when he was late getting a gig one time. So we've crossed paths with different musicians, and we went through Gerlach Entertainment in Houston with Bob Hope, Bing Crosby, Frank Gorsh, and Nancy Ames. Those are names you probably know. Different people like that. And then Buddy Rich on the drums, Gene Krupa. But my husband was a trumpet player, and Doc Severinsen would come in and do a clinic, but he got to do a lot of famous things, and I got to sing here and there and open up before Alabama. Alabama used to babysit my children, the band, at the Morris house, and now my name's Morris. So, it's weird how things happen to you, but I just want to sit and listen to how did you get from, like, Louisville to, I guess, California, and then writing and being a surfer and all of that, just personal. If you don't mind, it's just good to have a recording of it. Stuff you
I was born
in about.
I was born in Louisville. You say it the way they say it back there. When people read it, they call it Louisville, but you're right, they pronounce it Louisville. I was born there, and my dad, actually, he played guitar, and he played guitar and five-string banjo in a Dixieland band for a while, but that wasn't what he did for work. He was a flight instructor and charter pilot, and he raced in Indianapolis. So I grew up in a colorful family, and my mom sang with big bands. And I remember, the cold winters back there in Louisville, and my dad would come out here to California to work or do whatever he was sent out here to do. And one winter, I built an igloo in my front yard, and I remember he came back and said, "We're moving to California. I'm tired of these cold winters." And I used to go across the railroad tracks where the black folks lived and remembered seeing them playing music, because I played with a lot of little black kids there that were my friends. And that was my first time, TJ, of seeing somebody play bottleneck slide guitar. And they would just, cut off the end of a glass wine bottle and put it on their finger. And it was so unique. And that kind of stuck in my mind, and I remembered that. And on my 11th birthday, they got me a ukulele, and my dad started teaching me chords on that. And we had made a trip out here to California around that time and looking at everything and seeing the Indians, out in the desert. And I was just, I wanted to meet Roy Rogers and Gene Autry. And so when he said we were moving to California, I think I was 12, about to turn 13, and I was just so happy. So when we came out here, he ended up managing a glider port at a place called Lake Elsinore, where they would have these yearly sailplane contests. And he taught me to fly a Piper Cub when I was only 14, and I later sailed and sailed solo in a Schweitzer 126 glider. And I was always interested in things that fly. And then, in the 50s, they had all those great flying saucer movies. And so I was always asking my dad, "Daddy, do you really think there's people out there in space?" And he would say, "Oh, yeah." He said, "It's too big for us to be the only ones here." So I was constantly looking for flying saucers, and I never saw one till 1974 on Maui. So anyhow, my musical thing kept growing, and by the time I was in high school, we'd moved up here to the Central Coast, and my dad was giving flight instruction in a town just south of here a little bit called Santa Maria. And I ended up playing solo at a little neighborhood movie theater. And I was started out as an usher and a cleanup boy, and the manager heard me on a break when there was nobody in the theater. And I remember I was playing Poor Little Fool by Ricky Nelson. And he went, "Boy, you've got a good voice and you play good too." And he said, how would you like to get up on the stage in between the two movies in the matinee and do 3 or 4 songs? I said, "Oh, yeah." And he said, "I'll give you $12." And I said, "Does that mean I get to keep my $35 a week for being an usher and cleaning up?" And he said, "Oh, yeah." So I got up and sang my song solo with now an electric guitar and an amplifier through a PA. And after the first show, I went out in the lobby and I was mobbed by teenage girls wanting my autograph. And I went, "Hey, I think I'm in show business." And I think I was about a junior in high school then. And then during my senior year, I met some other high school students that were forming a band. And we formed the band The Impacts and got the house band job around the end of '61 in Pismo Beach at the Rose Garden Ballroom. And at that time, that was the biggest ballroom between L.A. and San Francisco. And we ended up backing up people like the Coasters and Little Anthony and the Imperials, the Isley Brothers, and then people like the Ventures, the great instrumental group who I idolized, would play there, and I got to meet them. And so that just spurred me on, and I started writing these songs, and I was a surfer, and I was writing instrumental songs and putting surfing terms to them like kick out and wipe out and tandem, and just went on, and we had all these songs written, and a talent scout heard us playing from Delphi Records in Los Angeles and took us down to L.A., and in one afternoon we recorded a whole album, and they said it was some kind of record for speed of recording. Went back home, and within a month and a half, the album Wipeout by The Impacts, which is now a big collector's item, was in every store here in L.A. and San Francisco, and that got me started, and I went on into the psychedelic folk era and kept going and never stopped. And now, 50 albums later, I'm still thankful I'm still going.
And that was the second song I learned to play on my guitar when I picked up my guitar when I was 15.
You're
First one was
kidding.
House of the Rising Sun. No, my boyfriend was in a band at the time. Honey, I'm on the radio. Can you make less noise? And he was playing, locally in Pittsburgh. And anyway, I fell in love with him because he was in a band, right? He could sing, and I had my own guitar that I had picked up and just started wandering around the neighborhood, meeting people, and they'd all we'd teach each other songs. Whoever you would meet would teach you songs. And then he came along. He started teaching me Wipeout, and his band was playing it.
Wow.
Small world, right?
Well,
Yeah,
there's a video of me and Willie Nelson playing Wipeout with the band on Maui at the Mac Center in front of thousands of people. And Willie surprised everybody. He pulled out an electric guitar, a Fender Stratocaster, and we launched into Wipeout. And he takes a solo in it that sounds like it came out of an old 60s surf song. Nothing country about it. And afterwards, I shook his hand and I said, "Thank you, Willie. That was great." And he said, "I did that for you, Merrel." And we became instant friends, and we did the whole that whole concert together. and you can see us playing Wipeout together if you